Yes, it does. I try and put something out into the world that is related to my recent publication, but translated for a lay audience because, my research is in the public interest to me, and I really believe that community support is really important. So I have written for Newcastle Herald, I've provided commentary, I've done podcasts about my work, and I've even performed it as an artwork at an art festival. So any way that I can kind of get it out there, I try and do. I have a teaching background, and scientific literacy has always been really important to me. And I actually had no concept of what research was, what people did, and how you access that as I was going through my undergrad. So it always has been really important to me to talk about what I do and to find ways for it to reach people.
Yes, it's becoming increasingly important that we promote our research to industry. This could take various forms. It could be industry forums, newsletters, and other industry-based news services that can then help disseminate the work that we do and get published in academia for the end user within industry.
So I think the conversation is a great way of getting your research out there in a more palatable format. Absolutely. Sometimes you can do something that might be slightly less time consuming, like do a radio interview. So we do have a couple of people at the university who are linked in with local ABC radio, and they're very interested in hearing from researchers. And so if you knew you had a paper coming out, then you could contact the radio station and ask to chat to them. So local ABC radio is often a good avenue as well. Obviously, the impact of that is not international. It's only going to be really local, but it's also a nice sort of way of showing our community what kind of work we're doing. And then, of course, the university does have a marketing team who can do media releases if you have a really big impact paper, or even something that they can market in that's sort of a topic that's going to catch people's interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we've done a really big study that we think is going to get a lot of interest, then my strategy would be to propose a conversation piece to accompany it that kind of is a more user-friendly for the lay public. And I think more and more it's kind of hard to get your work in the conversation because I think there's a lot of people putting research in there. But if I've done a big study, a big trial that's been a huge amount of effort, and you may publish in a really good journal, as we did with one of our recent studies, I would look to pitch an article to the conversation to increase the impact of those findings and get it out there to more people. Sometimes, we might get invited to do a non-scholarly. It might be because we might have done something that has relevance to teacher educators, and you get invited to do a sort of a summary piece. And I would almost always say yes, because they're kind of low-hanging fruit, and they do help to kind of, even if it isn't going to drive citations, it will definitely drive uptake of that research, which kind of contributes to research impact, which is what we're also trying to achieve as researchers.
So I have published in conversation quite a bit with my PhD students, and it has given us quite a lot of confidence that some of the work we do are really impactful in one way, and also they had been digested by different groups of people or in different countries, because there are a lot of analytics that you could see post publication, and that gives us even framing the issues better next time based on those audience. So if there was a lot of audience from America, so next time we will know that there's an interest in that country about a particular area. Particularly the articles we wrote about bushfires have been pretty much equal access from America and Australia. And also, some of these conversation articles can be targeted to regions. So some of my PhD students from the African continent has looked at Conversation Africa. So they publish there. So that's one thing. The second thing is that people have done podcasts, YouTube channels, and all of them are kind of dissemination channels for your work.
Non-traditional outputs, I think, are really important, and particularly in nursing, I think that it is important to think about how you will communicate your work, your body of work, to nurses in practice settings. It's finding the audience and communicating with them in the format that's going to be most useful for them. So sometimes I do write an article for industry magazines, and I think that is really important and well received, and certainly helps to build rapport with industry, which is very important about managing your network as well. So I think that's critical. Sometimes I develop a podcast that goes with an article that we might have published. So we might have a short podcast conversation about the article, and that is another way of non-traditional way of communicating the results of research or publications to audiences who might be relevant audiences in the health sector, but formatting it and giving it to them in a way that is accessible to them. So signposting the work, that they can listen to a podcast when they're going for a walk, or driving home from work in the car. On the one hand, you've got to develop a portfolio of research and scholarship, and on the other hand, you have to think about how you will communicate that to others, and think about what ways you communicate best. We've used things like infographics to communicate the work of articles. We've done some work in the international context around menopause, and one of the early things we did in that project was to develop an infographic, an image that helped convey some of the ideas of the work that we were developing, and that's probably one of my most favourite images is because from our research is because the image from that research really conveyed very strongly visually what it was that we were doing and finding.